What's up everyone, this is Red from This Building Matters, and today I'm going to show you how to use these Sanborn fire insurance maps to do research on old homes, commercial properties, or really anything in a lot of older American cities. So first you need to find the actual address. A lot of times buildings have multiple addresses, and it's just good to have like the primary one for tax purposes, etc., to base your search. So I have typed in here on the Detroit parcel viewer a address that is correct, but not the main address. So when I search it here, as you can see, it takes me to the correct area, but it will not take me to the actual address because it is not the primary address. So I know that it is this one right here. So I know that the actual address here is 5553 Shane Street. So if I were to take this into another one that's not just Detroit specific, which is Regrid. So if I were to put 5555 Shane Street in here, you're not going to get anything. But if I were to change that to 5553, there's the address. So that's just kind of helpful to know what all the addresses could be so you can search it in Regrid, and now we have the official address to look it up on the map. So now I'm on the Sanborn Volume Finder, which is something through the Library of Congress that is on a bunch of U.S. cities, mostly like Rust Belt cities and stuff like that. But this is helpful because it helps you find all of the volumes for a specific address. So if I type in our address, which is 5553 Shane Street, and search that, it takes us to that location. But as you can see, nothing pops up here in this search result. So if I click away from that, and I know that this is the property here, I click it again, and then this little pop-up here comes up and it shows us that we have one of three. So there are three available maps for this area. So this is the first one from 1897, then 1921, and then 1950. So depending on what you're looking for, you can kind of pick the map you want to go with. So I typically like to start at the newest map because that's the one that's probably going to look the most similar to today, depending on what the development you're looking for when that was done. But you could start with the earliest one. I know that there was nothing there in 1897, so we will start with 1950 here, and that'll jump us into a new map. And then we have all of the scans of this map here. So depending on who scanned it and when it was scanned, these are going to be in a different order. I think it also depends on where everything was in the actual map itself. So here we got lucky. The third page is the index. Sometimes it's at the very back of it. So if you don't see the index in the first couple pages, go to the very last page and then you can look from there. But now you can zoom in and we are looking for Shane Street. So here is the C's, Shane Street, and we're looking for 5553. So let's see here, 5553 would be contained in page 104 because that's 5500 to 5775. So that's page 104. And it's not super intuitive, so we can't, if we go to page 104, as you see here, let's find 104, we'll click on that and we'll hit go. It's not going to take us to page 104. That's page 98, so we need to go 6 pages ahead. So it'll be page 110. And that is page 104. So now, as you can see, there's a ton of information here, and you can actually download these if you want to. You can download larger file sizes. Obviously, the largest file size here is going to be the TIFF file. Most people don't deal with TIFF files, so if you want a large JPEG-like file, go with the JPEG 2000, but typically these two JPEG options are going to be your best bet. But as you can see here, we have quite a bit of information. If we zoom in over here, you can see we have 5553 Shane Street. So you can see that it looks like there's like different layers here, and that is correct. So basically the way the Sanborn maps worked is they made one map and then they altered it for a few, sometimes, 10, 20 years, and then eventually they made a new one. So it's like they had one, they altered it, and then eventually they made a new one. So this is an altered map. So they just put pieces of, new pieces of paper over the old one. So as you can see, 5553 Shane Street was one store here, one big store, and there are a bunch of different colors here, which as you can see, they denote different things. So whether that be brick or concrete block, like that back here, it says CB brick face, so that's concrete block brick faced, and there are different map legends for this that you can find. There's one through MIT that's very helpful, and you can use that to get information. But as you can see, there's a ton of information just here without even knowing that. You can see it has 12 feet of frontage here, but there's lots of information just by looking at this before you even look at anything else. And I think one of the best things about Sanborn maps is typically if there's a Sanborn map for 1 year, there's one for other years prior. So if we go back to this here, to the index finder here, and we go back and let's check out 1921, we'll click here. And then as you can see, we did not get as lucky this time with where the index is. So we're going to go to the very last page and find that index here. There's the index. And then we're going to find 5553 Shane Street again. Let's see here. Exchange Street. Sometimes it's the same page, and that shows that, the map was not updated. So, yep, 104 again. So, instead of typing in 104 this time, I'm going to try 110 and see if we can get lucky, because I believe that was what it was at last time. Typically, I go with 1 over. That seems to be the lucky number, so 105 would be the lucky one. So, that's 107. So, we need to go 3 back. So, click 107, and that'll get us to 104. So now if we zoom in here, you can see that, okay, this was drastically different in 1921. It was just 2 storefronts, and we did not have that whole big back section here. So it was 2 small storefronts with 12 foot of frontage and just didn't have the brick facing either. So this was just a wood, I believe yellow is a wood structure. And then now it was they had some veneered brick added onto the front here, which is the pink. So that's very interesting, and also something that's very helpful from this 1921 is that, so a lot of cities, Detroit probably most notably, had a large address change in 1921. So all of the addresses in the whole city pretty much changed in 1921, and obviously this kind of wreaked havoc for these maps and also people who just lived in the city. So this up here, the 1193, that is what the address was in pre-1921. So if you're looking at a structure and there's maps for it pre-1921, which we're going to look at for this one, you need to know that address of what it was before 1921. And you can do that using a conversion tool, which not even a tool, it's just a big huge PDF, and you can look up the property and find what the address was. But it's just kind of frustrating to have to do sometimes. But if you're looking at the map and you look at the newer ones first, a lot of times the old one is plastered right here, especially if it's a map from the 1920s. So that way we know that for when we're looking at the earlier map, we need to look up 1193. But something also to note between the difference between this is that this has 2 addresses, whereas this one here just has 1. So it was 5553 in the 1950s, and it had both of these addresses in the 1920s, and eventually it was converted into one bigger store, which was Max's Jewelry Store. So if we're going back now to even further, we need to look up that 1193. So we're going to go back to 1897, and we'll click here. The older the maps, the harder they can be to look at and just kind of scan through, because it was such a big difference between 2024 and 1893. What was that address again? 1193. So we're going to find the index. As you can see, lots less on this map. We're going to find Exchange Street and then 1193. So we're going to go up. There's Exchange Street. 1167, so it'll be on page 104 again. Let's see what it's on this time though, because it's rarely ever the actual page number. Looking for 104, this is 102, so we'll go 2 ahead to 106. And then as you can see, there is hardly anything going on in this map because there just wasn't that much development in the area. So pretty much nothing here on this side of Exchange Street. There was a small dwelling there, and then when you compare it obviously to these ones here, there's not completely filled up in 1921, but a lot more than there was here in 1897. And then compare that to the 50s when there's hardly any vacant lots at all. Obviously huge changes in the neighborhood. When you in this one here, you don't have the Shane Ferry Market, which is here in the 1950s, and then obviously in the 1800s there was nothing there either. There are actually some houses where that market would eventually be. So you can really get a good gauge of how the neighborhood changed over time. And just very helpful too for if you're doing building research, you can get the different addresses and just different information on how buildings change. Like we saw that addition was completed in between that time frame. And just if this building was not a great example of that, but if you're trying to figure out what something was, and it's like you can look here and you can see, okay, this was the Ferry Shane Public Market, and it tells you what it was built from: steel frame wood with concrete floor. And just give you the different addresses and stuff like that. It can be very helpful for things like that. And over here we have some sort of a manufacturing facility here, and it gives you more information on just all of the things that were in there, because these maps were used for insurance purposes, and they needed to know what was there, what the safety precautions were, etc. And for some of the larger manufacturing facilities, and sometimes for churches, I don't think there's a church on this map, but a lot of times churches were labeled as the church that they were. And for different storefronts here, you can see this was a cigar factory, and it was the Webster Tobacco Company. So you just get a lot of information from these maps, and they're super helpful for things like that. And then once you have the addresses, you have all that extra information, you can plug it into different, like on newspapers.com or something like that, and they can be very helpful for just finding more information about buildings. And I think I might do a more detailed video on this in the future, But this was just a first look on how you can do this in a city like Detroit. I believe the Sanborn, what is it called here? The volume finder is available in I think like 10 or 12 US cities. So if you're lucky enough to live in one of these cities, this makes it very easy to do so. And I hope that they do more of these in the future. Sometimes when you do get to this area on this part of the map, it hasn't been scanned yet, or sometimes there's still a copyright holder, so you can't look at the map, but you are able to send them a message and ask them to send you a photo. Let's see if I can quickly find one that is not available. So I'm going to click over here because a lot of times that has, yeah, see right here, this map is not available online. Please contact the Geography Map Reading Room. And if you do that, you can send them an email and tell them exactly what you want, and they'll typically send you a photo. So I have rambled on long enough. If you have any questions about using the Sanborn map, let me know. Or if you want me to make a more detailed video on this in the future, also let me know about that.